Welcome friends to the Sunday's class. Today's topic is ego to non-ego. How the ego affects our life and confusion about self-esteem and ego, self-respect and ego, and the benefits that we reap if we know the non-ego state. So this is the topic for today. So I'll be speaking in English. Anybody not understanding, you can raise your hand and I'll explain in Telugu also. Okay friends? So I hope everyone can understand. I'll be using only simple English. Okay. Yeah. So how do you define ego? What is ego means? We know what the ego is. We experience it every day. There is a certain tendencies in us which are coming out as certain behaviors, egoistic behaviors. And we tend to, sometimes we are not aware of that we are egoistic also. We think I am very humble person, but many times there is tremendous lot of ego, big ego inside us. So big ego, big suffering. Less ego, less suffering. No ego, no suffering. That is the equation. So the whole spiritual science, meditation path, it is actually driving us to dissolve and drop and let go of this ego in us. So today we look into certain aspects, certain pointers which can help us to understand about this ego to non-ego, this journey. We are actually making a journey. It's a spiritual journey, a meditation journey, where we recognize that I have this ego, and then we can actually go towards non-ego states and dissolve it. So friends, there are two types of minds we have. Two compartments, two things in the mind. We all know there are certain times we experience a lot of turbulence, a lot of chaotic thoughts, negative thoughts, critical thoughts. We tend to criticize people. This we call it as a lower mind. This lower mind is all the time, it looks faults in others. It searches for mistakes in others. And whereas this other mind is called higher mind, which has a different functioning. Higher mind always has high ideals and high thinking, and it sees goodness in people, everyone. If there is a black spot on the white wall, the lower mind says there is a black spot. We point the finger at that and we criticize. But instead of appreciating, oh, there is 99%, this is a white wall, beautiful white wall. In every person, we also judge them. This lower mind is attached to egoic self in us. That egoic mind is nothing but the lower mind. The higher mind is identified with our soul, the inner self, inner being. So there are times when you practice meditation, you dropped this lower mind and you are moving into the higher mind. That moment, there's no judgmental nature, no critical thinking, and you're open, you're flexible, you're not rigid. When ego is there, there's so much of rigidity. I am right and you are wrong. I am okay, you are not okay. I am great, you are less. Always ego separates people. Ego is a wall, whereas our higher mind, which is connected with the self in us, is a bridge. It actually bridges people. They bring people together. So, number one, first let us know about the characteristics of ego, how to identify, how to diagnose that there is ego in us. Even if people think that they don't have ego, they have ego. Most of the people, if you ask them, are you egoistic, sometimes they say, no, I'm never egoistic. My brother is egoistic, my wife is egoistic, I'm not egoistic. Like any psychiatric patient, if you go and ask them, are you mad? No, I'm not mad. Other people are mad. They deny it. They can't see the point. That's the whole thing, The ego is, sometimes it's not seen visibly outside, but it is so invisible inside. It's a sukshma ahankar. This ahankar is at a very, very subtle level. That's why we have to be so aware to even eliminate that kind of subtle ego that we have, which is much more dangerous. And generally it is seen in many even spiritual people. I come across people that there is a spiritual ego that develops. I am the greatest spiritual master, I am the master, nobody else is comparable to me. This kind of spiritual ego comes. Spirituality itself is teaching us to dissolve the ego completely. So friends, some characteristics I'll share about the egoism. It is egoism, So holding on to one's viewpoint. We stick to our viewpoint. You can't see the viewpoint of others. That's where all the problems in relationships, they come. Because wife and husband or in the family members, they go on sticking to one viewpoint. They say, this is correct, you are wrong. They go on fighting. Even many separation, divorces that happens is because they're egoistic. They're not able to see the viewpoint of the wife or husband. And all the conflicts that we see are egoic conflicts. Even many countries, they fight with each other out of ego. Oh, America, we are supreme race, supreme country, How can you not respect us? We are supreme. You must accept that we are supreme people. So to prove that, they will do anything, And every country, my country's viewpoint is great, your country's viewpoint is less. Not only individuals. This ego is there, even the countries, the whole country, it has developed a kind of certain ego. Here we need to understand first our personal ego that we developed. How sometimes we are so unforgiving, so much rigid in our views, and we tend to resist so much. So this is one of the characteristics of ego. A person who has no ego will not be rigid in the views. They are very flexible. They also step into the shoes of the others to look at their viewpoint. They try to understand the viewpoint of others. So friends, in some of the families, between mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, always there is a war, cold war or direct war going on every day. So if they step into the shoes of the other, mother-in-law steps into the shoes of the daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law steps into the shoes of the mother-in-law, what happens is there's so much of compassion that can come. The ego in them will not allow them actually to understand the viewpoint of others. Can you understand this point, what I'm sharing? We suffer so much because we are rigid in our views. That's the ego characteristic. So, attachment to what is known, resistance to change. The egoic mind, the lower mind, it resists change. Ego always want to stick on to the known. Unknown things threaten the ego. Our identity will be crashed. That's why you want to live in that same known things. Sometimes even if it is so much victimizing or abusing, or so much of a very abusive and victimizing for you, you tend to stick on to it because you resist change. Once upon a time, this is the story by one Chinese master, Chuang Tzu. He was demonstrating or telling to people or his disciples about what is ego and what is non-ego. So he was narrating through a kind of story. He told a story. This story is about trees, two trees. One is a big tree, like a big oak tree, which is huge, and there's another small plant is there, rose plant, small plant. This oak tree used to feel egoistic all the time. See, I'm so big, I have big branches, you are very small. Sometimes we do that in life. We have more money than others, we tend to look at people, I am superior than you. I am more powerful position in the job, you tend to have an ego. You are a CEO of a company, or you have big position, or you are a minister, you tend to have an ego. And you tend to see others as lesser beings. So this oak tree also was very egoistic, and looking at that rose bush as something very, very less menial, and all the time telling, you are nothing, look at me, I can touch the sky and I can go high. And Rosebush was really feeling very bad about this. If somebody scolds you that way, you are inferior, I am superior, it makes you bad. And one day there was a storm. There is a big storm that has come, winds, and this big tree has fallen down because it's so rigid. That big tree with these heavy winds and thunderstorm, it has completely fallen, broken into pieces. Whereas this small bush, rose bush, it was dancing in the winds the whole night because it is flexible, because it has no ego. With a great big ego, that big tree has fallen down. Many people in their lives, their downfall starts when this ego grows in them, because the ego makes us resist change, hold on to our viewpoint, and will not allow others' viewpoint, will not see the much greater picture of life. This is what happens. So we can be like this small rose bush and just be flexible, understand everyone's viewpoint, understand everything as it is, accept everything as it is. And the third thing is, when we have this ego, comparisons will come, we tend to compare. Oh, that person is much better than me, happier than me. That person has more brilliant than me, more intelligent than me. We tend to compare. The egoic mind, the lower mind, always compares. It compares all the time. And you try to prove, oh, I must be better than him. Then the whole competition rat race begins, I must have more money than the other person, so I will prove my worth. I will prove myself. Oh, life goes for that money game, rat race, and they will not really enjoy this moment. Some futuristic goals we keep and we go on missing this moment. This is what ego does. It always compares. If we have this ego in us, we tend to compare our children and we compare everything. So the fourth thing is criticism. When we are egoic, all the time this background critical voice will be there. All the time criticizing. Negative thoughts, all the time they come first. We tend to think negatively. And the critical thoughts, particularly even self-criticism, even criticism about others. So friends, these are some of the characteristics and even our behaviors when we have the ego, fear and insecurity. Ego always is fearful and very insecure. Who is the most fearful person in the world? The person who is identified with the ego. Ravana. The ego. It makes them to feel fearful, very insecure. And this ego, because it is so tiny and very, very little, it feels very exhausted all the time. Because of critical thinking, negative thinking, the ego with full of fear and insecurity, it can't really see the inner magnificence. We are much bigger than our egos, but we are so much identified with the ego. We became Ravanas. We are supposed to live like Ram, Lord Rama, who is very, very non-ego, only just a pure being, experience of the self. And separativeness. Ego always separates. Ego says that you and me, we are very, very different. But non-ego identifies that we are oneness beings. There's something that is connecting all of us. Ego isolates people. Ego separates people. Ego always is like a divide and rule policy. We divide and we rule. Whereas the self in us wants to always, soul, it wants to unite. It's the unity of consciousness. And all the time we feel lack of energy. We get so much drained. Temporarily the egoistic people, they may feel good. Temporary kick comes for them because of the money ego, or there is an ego that comes from the powerful position that you hold in your company, or you may get the ego out of your knowledge, intellectual ego. Oh, I have read more than you. I have read all the scriptures. You have not read anything. One Pandit actually was so egoistic. He read the Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata. He was going in a boat and he asked the boatman, because he is full of ego, intellectual ego. He asked the boat, have you read Bhagavad Gita? Have you read Ramayana? He said, no, I don't know anything about these things. Then he said, no, you are a stupid, you are a fool, you wasted your life. You are waste. And what happened is there was a heavy storm, heavy flood in the river. The boat was about to crash, about to drown. That moment, boatman asked, "Do you know swimming?" No. Many people, there's an ego in the mind which is identified intellectual knowledge only. They are intellectuals. I have read more than you. That's also intellectual arrogance. We have different types of age arrogance. Age arrogance says, I am older than you, that means I am wiser than you. Old means does not bring the wisdom in people. Even Adi Shankaracharya was just 6 years old. He was such an enlightened being. People may be 90-year-old, very stupid. It's sometimes intellectual arrogance comes because of the age. I am very old. I am senior. But senior in the age, but not in the wisdom. Not in the soul wise. So it's very, very important. The age arrogance, money arrogance, power arrogance, and different. I have much beautiful family than you. Even the arrogance about these identities that we have. So the need for stuffing. Ego always is all the time feels that I'm not having enough. It feels that I need to accumulate more. Because ego feels it's tiny, it always compensates with the physical material things. When we have big ego, we want to possess many things, many possessions. Let me have this property, that property, and what we do? 10 houses they build, but they live only in one bedroom, one small space is needed. But they multiply their property, they have 100 shoes, 100 pairs of shoes. They only wear one pair of shoes. They have 100 types of clothes, which is not required. We need only one cloth. So these are all need for stuffing behaviors. This is also egoistic. When we have big ego, we always stuff things. And ego is dissatisfied all the time. This cycle of dissatisfaction, all the time it runs. So you will not be satisfied. Today you ate jalebi, and tomorrow your ego says, I will eat 2 jalebis, 3 jalebis, 4. It goes on, and again you are dissatisfied. The next day again with the dissatisfaction, more you will eat. More greed, more dissatisfaction. Never we are happy with what we have at this moment. People may have 100 rupees in their pocket, they may feel very happy. I have seen people, they live so happily with whatever they have. But there are people, they have 1 million rupees in their bank account, 1 crore rupees, but they're still not happy. I don't have 10 crores. They think that I don't have 10 crores. This is what the ego always thinks, always operates like that. So we run in this kind of satisfaction, dissatisfaction cycles when we have big ego. Our whole life will be with running and not being satisfied with the things that we have right now. We aim at somewhere in the future that I will have, and we miss this moment. Beautiful joy, this we can actually right now we can experience. That we'll miss. So ego lives either in the past or in the future. The self always resides, non-ego resides in this present moment. This moment is the golden moment. So now let me clarify between negative ego and positive ego, because we can get confused. People have this question. The non-ego means do I have to be no self-respect, no self-esteem? They may feel that if they have self-confidence about something, they feel it sometimes it's egoistic. So we need to have an understanding, proper understanding about what is positive ego and negative ego. In Vishnu Sahasranamam, there are two phrases. One phrase is called Darpada, another one is called Darpaha. The Vishnu is nothing but the eternal, immortal, infinite consciousness which is residing in everyone. So that Vishnu in us has the qualities of Darpada and Darpaha. Darpada means Darpam Dharinchuvadu. Darpaha is Darpam Harinchuvadu. Darpam is ego, Ahankar. So persons, they may wear the ego clothes. They feel very, very egoistic, big, like this. I'm supreme, I'm a he-man, I am supreme than you. So, and this ego says that I am the greatest person. For example, you are a musician, you say, I'm the greatest musician, the greatest musician. Whereas positive ego says, I am one of the good musicians in the country. This is completely different. You can always feel good about yourself. It's not ego. The self in us can feel good. You need to have proper self-image, not a low self-image, not low self-esteem, not low self-confidence. That also is actually egoistic. People tend to take oscillations. They go to the extremes. They go to the high ego, they'll fall down from there, they go into very low states. Whereas positive ego, you always know the self in us recognizes that I am worthy. I am a divine being. This is completely different. We need to understand the subtle difference between positive and negative egos. This concept is called Keku concept in Telugu. I will tell. Keku means, K means Nake Telusu. Ku means Naku Telusu. There is so much difference between these two statements. నాకొక్కడికే నాకే తెలుసు, మీకెవ్వరికీ తెలియదు, యువర్ స్టూపిడ్ ఇడియట్స్. నాకు తెలుసు, అందరికి తెలిసినట్టు నాకు తెలుసు. That is the subtle difference between positive, negative egos. Negative ego make us suffer so much. So how the ego develops? Next point is how the birth of ego happens. It always comes from ignorance, lack of self-awareness, self-knowledge. So this ego, it continuously develops in us because we don't know about who we are truly. We get identified with only the outer personality structure. We identify with the body. We think I am the most handsome person, the handsome person in the world. And everyone feels that way. When they watch movies, they get identified always with the hero or heroine. The inner drama, inner movie will be running. They feel like a hero. Nobody wants to be something other than that. So the ego identifies with either the body or the mind or the human emotions. It constitutes a personality structure called ego structure is formed. We are not these things. We are actually having these clothes. These are all like our costumes. The physical body is a costume. Mental body is a costume. Emotional body is a costume. We are actually the soul. Soul which is residing in this ego structure. More we identify with this ego, that's where the problem begins. So this is how an ego develops. For example, in the childhood, your father is scolding you all the time and mother was emotionally not available. What happens is you try to seek the appreciation, love from your mother and the father. You want to be approved by your father. What we'll do is to seek the approval of the father, we try to please him. We try to, my father will be pleased if I get good marks in mathematics. So you will study good mathematics, constantly seek approval from the father. So you will notice that when you are getting good scores in the school, your father is very happy. When you are not getting good scores, you are disapproved, you are scolded at home. The child develops a certain ego now. They try to prove themselves to the parents that I am good enough. Basically, they already a seed thought is already sown that I am not good enough, I am bad, I am less intelligent. All these things are already there. So about that, there is a mask they develop. Is called an arrogance mask. They develop that I am now good in mathematics. See, now I will also excel in the college. So my father feels very proud. So his whole life will be proving. Later on in life he will try to get awards and rewards, and even they aim at Nobel Prize also to prove to the world, see, I am worthy. I am very great master, I am worthy. Look at me. Why you are not appreciating me? I got awards, I got first prize. But what happens is, even if the people appreciate them, the ego will not be satisfied. Because they need to understand they are already worthy. The awards, rewards that we get from people, appreciations we get from people will not make us actually realize this truth that you are already worthy being. The ego, this is how it develops. It wants to prove, it wants to all the time seek attention from people. Ego wants to seek attention, love from people. It can't understand that it has already so much love inside. So much is there inside. Because ego is identification. So this is how most of the times the fear and the conditioning that happened in the childhood, the child develops arrogance and the ego. It continues later on life. Egoistic thoughts, words and deeds. As I mentioned that our ego, it also comes into the thoughts, in the thinking process. Lot of thoughts are egoistic thoughts. It is self-centered, very selfish. You can't see others also. You only think about yourself. It's good to think about yourself first. But you will be so self-centered, you will ignore completely your whole family. You're so egoistic. For example, you're living in a family. First you need to eat your dosa in the morning. But after that, you need to think about others also. What about my wife, my children? All this. But egoistic person is always only me. I, me, only that. So, words, every word will be full of arrogance, full of ego. We can, when you hear people, you can sense that. Is it coming from their soul talk, or is it arrogant talk? From the ego it is coming. The words will be full of ego. Always they boast themselves. I'm this and that, self-boasting. And even our behaviors, deeds, every action, behavior also will be with egoistic. How an arrogant person behaves, how he sits, how he stands, how he portrays himself. It will be very egoistic, very arrogant attitude, always looking down. I came to know how Hitler was a very egoistic person, because I had an experience there in Munich. I went to Dachau, first Nazi concentration camp. There, Hitler, he used to think he is the only supreme Aryan race. He is the first supreme and superior person. So all the prisoners were captured. He used to take the photographs from above, not from the same place. The photographer will climb a big staircase. From the top, they used to always take from the above, so that world will know that they are inferior, we are superiors. There is a superior, Aryan race is superior race. They are all inferior people, that kind of thing. So we need to understand that our actions, they also speak louder than words. Even our action, many people are not aware how arrogantly they behave. Very arrogantly. Non-verbal talk. They always belittle others through arrogant behaviors. There is a way to sit in the chair. There is an arrogant way of sitting also. There is an arrogant way of how you treat people. The people treat others arrogant way, egoistically. It's so important that we need to become aware these thoughts in the mind, actions, words that we speak. And fifth point I want to stress upon is Sthula Ahankara and Sukshma Ahankara. Many people, they can recognize Sthula Ahankara. Mostly the feedback will come from people only. The Sthula Ahankara, people will feel worse. If you are a very egoistic boss in your company, people will be getting drained. You will be so authoritative, you will push them, you will kick them, you will make them work like donkeys, and you want to prove, and you will not give others a scope for, to be relaxed and do the work. And Sthula Ahankara, we can always recognize it. But Sukshma Ahankara is the most dangerous and lethal. It's so invisible. This is what people mostly they carry within themselves. It's very Sukshma, very subtle. Lot of spiritual people, they have this. They are meditators, but they have this subtle Sukshma Ahankara, which comes out like how Ravana comes with a disguise. Even this Sukshma Ahankara will be with a disguise. They pretend humility. Oh, like humble, but Ativinayam Dhurta Rakshanam means too much humbleness. We can understand this person is behaving something. There is arrogance inside. He is trying to pretend outside, like Ravanashra wearing a mask, coming to kidnap Sita, something like that. So Sukshma Ahankara, we need to be very aware. Spiritual people, they develop, not only spiritual, even others also, the subtle ego. And ego brings so much suffering, so much dukkha, so much pain. All the time you will have such huge resistance when you have the ego. You will not be able to accept people as they are. Your ego will not allow you to accept everyone as they are. You will become super judgmental, critical, all the time. So much suffering. So big ego, big suffering. Less ego, less suffering. No ego, no suffering. We need to understand it. So, self-importance is our greatest enemy. And self-respect, which is generating self-importance, is a positive self-importance that you need to retain all the time. You need to feel good about yourself. You need to carry a good self-image. But I'm talking about the negative ego, which is our greatest enemy. Enemies are not outside. Enemies are always inside us. That's why Arihanta stage is actually being victorious over the inner enemies. The ego is our biggest enemy, worst enemy. So many of us, we are weakened by the feeling, offended by the deeds and misdeeds of our fellow men. When we have big ego, everything others they think and behave or express in words, it affects us. But every small thing will affect us when you have big ego. How can this person scold me? How can he behave like this towards me? why this happened, this is the egoistic. Everything from coming from people affects us when we have big ego. Our self-importance requires that we spend most of our lives offended by someone, and we go on suffering that way when we have big ego, and we create an ego story about that person. My mother-in-law is bad, my husband is very worst, and he's a villain, and we go on living that way, and whole lifetime it goes that way. Ego will not allow us to understand the other's viewpoint. And because of self-importance, we believe our problems are the most serious in existence, our opinions are the only correct ones. When we have this big ego, we always think that my problem is the deepest problem, my illness, and you can't see the illness of others. Others' pain we can't see. You think that you have the deepest problem. Everyone must attend to you only. Not if they ignore you, you get affected badly. You feel rejected, you feel unloved. So we see these tendencies in people sometimes because of that negative self-importance or negative self-ego. Ego and identifications and tricks of the mind. Always the mind creates traps, tricks. It tricks us all the time. It has justification to prove your point correct. Somehow it makes sure that you are correct and others wrong. That's the nature of the lower mind. Egoic mind always do that. I'm right, you are wrong. It proves. It has data. It collects the data and information and proves, yes, this is what happened. See, you are very wrong in this situation. So different identities we are identified with. So I'll share some identities. So this concept is called 7 I's. 7 identities. It's based on our energy centers, the chakras that we have in our etheric body. So the first identity is the physical I. Whatever that you see every day morning in front of the mirror, you think that is you, and you are identified with only that physical I. That physical I you think is you, and you cosmetic supply, you broom your hair, so much you do for this physical I. A lot of our time is going only for that. So you are too much identified. You think so arrogant about this physical I, and you wear clothes for the sake of others. You will, whether it is comfortable or not, you will not think. But is it looking good in the eyes of others? When we have the ego, that's what we do. We will always, to please others, to all the time seek approval, attention. We go on living like that. So the physical I is too much identified with the physicality. Next is related with Swadhisthana chakra. This is called emotional I. So this emotional I, you create one more identity. This identity is about emotional, mental and emotional. You always identified with that. You say that I am this person, I am the joyful person, nobody else. And I have the greatest problem you don't have, and you need to be with me, you need to attend to me. All these things is emotional identity. People carry this. They suffer so much because of the emotional egos. This third one is called power I, the Manipur chakra I. You try to, you feel inside so powerless. You try to prove the power. You gather the external power, but external power is not the true power. The power which is stemming from your soul, which is like a flower. It is compassionate power. Whereas the egoistic power, you do gym and you have six-pack body, and not only that, you do all that makeup, everything, and look like powerful person. People who have good muscles, they are not very, very weak people. Inside they will be very timid people. not all, but I say mostly those who are inside weak people, they try to develop, appear powerful outside.
Their concentration is on external things only.
External things only, true. Even power, they try to gather power from positions in the company's jobs. They want to be very powerful. If I control 100 people, you're a HR person, leader, then you feel very powerful. I'm controlling 100 people, 1,000 people. They feel powerful. This power is not real power. This is a false illusion. And people are too much identified with it. Ramanashara was too much identified with this power, ego, that's stemming from his Manipur chakra. And next is heart eye. Heart means the Anahata chakra eye. People who little more evolved, there is one more eye that is there in the heart center, which is all the time in the relationship, problems, turbulences, all the time. But there is most part of it is identified with love. First time we understand that there's not much of difference between me and the other person. Love makes us actually unite. It's the beginning of the I which is dissolving now. In the heart center, first time, our boundaries that we have got, ego boundaries, they start going away. We try to, our heart center loves people. Suddenly we also accept them as they are. If you love someone, you will accept the person as he is, as she is. If you don't love someone, you are identified with these three things, you will tend to not accept completely. So this is the heart eye. Then we go to the creative eye. This is the Vishuddha eye. So in a meditation process, person evolved into the Vishuddha chakra, the throat energy center. So they will be identified with only creativity. Creative ego is developed. So that also one identity, but it is a higher identity, but it is ego. You know, the most, I find a lot of artists, they are very egoistic. If you go and speak to them, artists, they are very egoistic. Painters, artists, but they are very wonderful old souls, but they carry that creative ego. They'll make you wait. You wait. They'll make you wait for 1 hour. I'm so busy, you have to wait for me. That creative ego comes. And this is Vishuddha chakra eye. But next one is called transcendental eye. It's nothing but the third eye. When people evolve, open this wisdom eye, the ego is dissolved now here. The I is dissolved. There is no I actually here. It's complete dissolution of the I. That's why it is called as transcendence. And where we understand that, we start understanding that I am part of the all. I am part of everything. I am a tiny minuscule in this whole spectrum or in the whole universe. Otherwise we think so big. But if you go and look at the sky in the night, you will be really feel very, very humbled. Look at the stars, galaxies, the whole universe. You are a tiny being. From there, if anybody takes a photograph, you will be not even be visible here on the earth plane. We are so tiny beings. So this transcendental eye, when third eye is open, we start understanding, oh, I'm just a part of this whole. Our ego is crushed completely. And then the big, this eye is nothing but the true eye. This is called multi-dimensional eye. The eyeless eye, eye without eye, or the Sahasrara eye, the crown center. Here we completely have an experience of the universal identity. It is actually not an identity at all, but we know that I am all that is. There is no I also there. Just we dissolve, the wave is dissolving to the ocean. Wave is identified now with the ocean. Wave will not fail. See, I'm a big wave. These are small waves. And we feel that way sometimes. Then we understand, I am part of this ocean, I am the ocean. There is no question of the wave and the ocean separate. So this is what is the I, the Sahasrara I. So friends, we are actually at different levels and stages of identifications, which creates different identities, right?
What is heart ego?
Heart ego is which is relationships ego. People, they go through, the heart is the center of love. So when they try to open their heart, sometimes they get hurt, they're rejected, sometimes they're wounded, sometimes they experience something beautiful also in life. But in this process, there is a certain ego that develops here in the heart center. But mostly this experience of heart center, people, they go through evolution. The ego, whatever is identified with the power, emotions, physicality, all that starts dissolving here. This identity is much more, in relationships. We are identified with many people around. We suffer so much because of that ego that is developed. And process of dissolution of ego. How to actually dissolve this ego is very, very important. First is we need to diagnose, identify that we have the ego. Mostly the lower mind denies that we have ego. Even if someone tells you that you are an egoistic person, it denies it. Completely we deny it. And then someone who is now very aware being understands, yes, I have ego. That's why I am suffering so much. I am holding on to my viewpoint. And even many people, they develop identified with spiritual organizations. For example, they identified with one organization. They say, this spiritual organization, the supreme path, others are less. There's a certain ego that comes in. We can't see the goodness present in even others. So it's so important to recognize this, and ego, that's the beginning of dissolution process. And initially there's a denial, resistance comes to dissolve because it's a death. It's a death. People, they feel that they're dying. When the ego is dying, they're too much identified with it. It's like a death. Oh, I'm dying, I'm dying. But unless they're ready to die, they can't be reborn. The ego need to die to emerge as a phoenix rising, new self that is coming up. So spirituality, spiritual process, all of them, they help us actually in dissolution of the ego. For example, this group energy, here there is only one common thread that is connecting all of us. There are no less or high here, no low or high. We are all equal here. It dissolves the ego. Ego in me, ego in you, and all things. If I feel egoistic as a speaker here, I will be crushed. I need to understand that I am one with you. So whatever I'm sharing, just my experiences, and you might have already all those experiences. In the group energy, always ego drops. And a person, the ego initially it ripens. It comes to the full ripening stage and then gets dropped. You can see that in many people. They get identified with the ego, and the ego ripens like a ripened mango. And then that mango drops on its own because they're so ready now. The big ego will be punctured. Universe, world, from people everywhere around, it is punctured. You are punctured and you are ready to drop. And also meditation is the ego dissolution process. Meditation is dying to that lower self or the egoic self in us. It dies. It's a resurrection that happens in meditation. And tools to chop the ego. There are several tools to chop this ego in us. Like one is meditation process, but there are other things like talking to plants and trees. For example, embrace a tree, tell it all your troubles, talk to it as if you are talking to a person. Generally there is a human ego in us, I'm supreme race, I'm superior. You don't speak to a blade of grass. You think it's so low, you're so busy all the time, you don't even look at the flower, beautiful flower in your garden. We tend to be so busy, very egoistic, the human ego, and just spend time with this small flower. Look at the beautiful blue with a geometrical pattern, and so good. Make friendship with it. It dissolves the ego. And go and hug a tree. We only hug human beings, not even hug human beings. We don't hug at all. But now start hugging even trees. And Carlos Castaneda was very egoistic. He's the author of several books. He's a great master. In his apprenticeship period with his guru, Don Juan recognizes his biggest block is his ego. It needs to be chopped. So he used to all the time devise some methods to chop his ego. So one of the things is he used to ask Carlos Castaneda, go and speak to the tree. He used to wonder, how can I speak? I'm a human, I must speak only to human beings. And he used to also tell, acting for the sake of acting. Like any absurd activity can serve for this technique. Say good night to your pillow before going to sleep. People may think you are crazy, you are insane. But it breaks this ego, the rigidity of the mind. Mullah Nasruddin, he's such a wise master. He used to teach in a very, very humorous, very, very laughter, way of laughter, all the teachings. And he used to chop his ego. All the time he used to play jokes on his own self. In India, Sardarjis are known for this. They crack jokes on themselves all the time. Generally, when we are egoistic, we make fun of others. But a wise person always makes fun of himself or herself, because it chops the ego. Tell about all the things and crash your ego. Like, it's okay, you peel off that mask, and taking care of someone. And the useful technique for lessening self, dedicating ourselves for a specific time to take care of someone, body and soul, especially the person is not to our liking. If you don't like your mother-in-law, really go and take care of her. She will be scolding you constantly. It will crash your ego. Whoever the people that you don't like, they are your greatest teachers. They will chop your ego. The words they hurt you badly is so important for you. It needs to be chopped off. The ego will be chopped.
I'm doing the same thing, sir.
Same thing now. Very good, very good.
My daughter.
Yeah. Taking care of someone and change of surroundings. Our ego always resists. And change of surroundings, change you need to accept all changes. Don't resist change. And for example, shift to one more place, live on a mountain for 40 days, break all the routines. Your ego wants routines. It develops a kind of mechanism. It wants to be all the time people praising you or putting you on a high pedestal, all that. Break it. Be just like ordinary simple being on a mountain. You are a nomad. You are living on the seashore. You are living in a forest without any identity. So, one master sends a disciple that go and live in the forest Because the disciple was asking for enlightenment, he says, now go and just live in the forest for a year, 1 year. He goes there and lives 1 year. First 1 month was very hard because there's no one to talk. Our ego wants to all the time talk to people. All the time wants to listen praises. Always want someone to say very good about you only. Ego want to be boosted up all the time. So this person, after 1 month, nobody talk, only plants and animals are there. Slowly he used to only watch the grazing cows, all the sheep there. And one day he lost even language. After 6 months, nothing to talk, no one to speak. Then what happened? No language now. He also became just like cows. He is just simple living in the forest. His ego is completely crashed. The moment his ego is crashed, enlightenment happened for him. He knew what need to be known. Our ego always is limited identity that we create. And playing the fool, as I mentioned, Mullah Nasruddin used to do, and especially for those who like to make an impression on others, for all those who have compulsive desire to make spectators of everyone around them. So you behave like a fool. Mullah Nasruddin all the time used to do that. All the people, they ride the donkey, sitting on the donkey facing front, but he used to always the reverse direction he used to sit. People always used to make a fool of himself all the time. And denouncing yourself. You have tendency to tell all the time your victim story to people, or what is going on, self-pity. Self-pity also is an ego. You always be pity on you, on yourself and others. When we have big ego, that's what we do. And it can help those people whose self-importance habitually takes the form of thinking of saying terrible things about themselves. See, my life is this and bad, everything is going bad, worse, and everything is all that suffering, and talking to others about their tremendous sufferings, faults or weaknesses, all the time. The phone call, meeting, and every time only this. They are in the victim story. Victims are egoistic. They identify with the ego. Ego all the time repeats the same story. It tells to people, it drains people. Many people, they come here, we do counseling, a lot of them we see this, they're egoistic, they're not able to really get out of their ego. They are so much identified, they tell the same old story after 1 year also. Sometimes we find methods to chop that ego and we have to crash it. So denouncing yourself, you need to wake up. Yes, I'm playing the same victim story. Every word I utter, every time I say this story to others, I'm recreating the same thing. Why not I stop it now, change the story. And in the middle of an argument, stop yourself and say something alive. You know what? I'm stupid. I just realized I'm again indulging in my old habit of arguing for the sake of arguing. You can help me by ignoring me. If you have a tendency to say the same old story of yours and really catch yourself with awareness, say this to others. I am repeating the same old story. Please ignore me. You don't need to listen to me. This is my old habits. I am OCD. I have obsessive compulsive neurosis. I repeat the same thing. And I'm sorry. You are right and I was wrong. This step will also remove any false sense of self, and also most the freeing one. Because many people, they think that they are right. And they try to prove that they are right. They try to justify it, their actions, words and everything. So with awareness, catch yourself. Step out of your ego. When you have to say sorry, it's okay to say sorry. When you are at mistake, you hurt somebody, go, I'm sorry, please forgive me. It's very humbling experience to say sorry. It's it crashes the ego. So This is really such a beautiful word, I'm sorry. People, egoistic people, they can't say sorry. They may tend to suffer so much. We see these in movies also. Person can't say sorry and keep it inside for whole life, they'll be suffering. Just between two people, just a sorry can build the new life again. They can forgive each other, step out of these egos. And petty tyrant is the one who really torments you, tortures you. And they help us, they are indirect teachers, to cultivate awareness which can drop the ego. Your awareness is completely multiplied in the presence of a petty tyrant who will be poking you all the time, triggering you. They are the ones who will shape our awareness so much. At your home, if you have a petty tyrant means who will torment you, torture you. They will make you progress in leaps and bounds, spiritual path. Not to take them as an enemy, but as a benefactor for you. They are going to benefit you tremendously spiritually. So not to judge them, instead, whatever they say, just look at your reactions, how your mind is reacting. Not to react, instead respond. Slowly notice triggers, how your ego is getting triggered, how you are becoming inside angry, but not to react in that moment, but instead practice that non-ego. It will really chop. So all the dangers that we have can be converted into certain wisdom, understanding and evolution for us. People may look at the dangers as very threatening, but for a wise person, all dangers will make them more aware beings. More problems, more challenges, that means more growth, more spiritual evolution. So petty tyrant, this is shamans, they recommend this practice is one of the tools. So finally, the 10th point that we learned here today is ego to non-ego is a journey. Meditation, actually we can drop the ego. When we are meditating, meditation journey, it takes us to that realization that I am identified with the outer periphery, personality structure, ego structure. We drop it. The moment we start dropping our outer things, we go into the inner self. So ego prevents us in the self-realization process. Awakening, realization is possible in this very moment. This very moment. We don't need to actually wait for enlightenment to happen after 1,000 years or 1,000 births. Zen master says this now or never, which means in this moment the possibility of enlightenment is existing right now, here and now. Only thing, we are ready to be dropped. Our ego need to be just dropped. We need to let go. This very moment, what need to be known, it will be revealed to you. Ego, it makes you go beyond your sphere of this lower mind. And once we cross that, you will just be with your inner magnificence, which just radiates. So we must know that meditation is actually a dying process. We die to this ego. That's why many meditators, they go through beautiful transformation. Suddenly shift in the viewpoint happens. Suddenly they become very, very forgiving. They step out of the ego and suddenly see the others' magnificence also. So it's a journey. Not that meditation really make all people egoless. Many people after meditation, they become more egoistic. They say, I am a meditator, I am a senior meditator, I am practicing meditation since 10 years, 20 years. I practice 5 hours meditation, 10 hours meditation. So it is also kind of ego. So we need to even be aware of that. So friends, for today's Sunday class, we looked into the ego, characteristics of ego, how the ego is born, what is the negative ego and positive ego, and then how these egoistic tendencies comes in the words, thoughts and deeds, actions, behaviors of us, and also how the ego creates this dissatisfaction cycles and greed and all that, and will not be really be able to live abundantly in this moment because of ego. When you are the soul as a self, this moment all the abundance is there. What more we need? We are content, satisfied with what we have right now, the breath that we have. What more we want? We need only just little food, little food. We are so greedy. We need to not have even the home also. We can sleep under the sky. Sky is the roof. Mother Earth is our carpet, bed. Nicely we can sleep everywhere, even though in the forest. So we are so obsessed. Our ego will not allow us to live abundantly in this very moment. People have these concepts about, if I have this money, I am abundant. Ego identifies with that. So know that abundance is right now existing if you can drop the ego. So we also looked into the tools of awareness to chop the ego, and sthula ahankar, sukshma ahankar. And now let us do little meditation now on this Sunday's class.